bring us into his presence and open up his wonders before us. And then he knows when in our heart we're resisting that because it's not what we used to do. That ain't how we do it around here. He knows. These were some of the things I thought about in my youth that made me think that worshiping God in spirit and in truth was difficult to impossible. Because if God knew all of that, and then some, how can I fool him? Isn't it interesting that folk figure that God knows all of everything, but yet they still try to figure out how to fool God? Yeah. I'm going to go up in that church today and I'm going to fool somebody. I'm going to pretend that it's all good. I'm all in the spirit today. But if it's not coming from your spirit, then it is not true worship. If something is not true, then it is false. If it is false, it's a lie. There is no halves. There's no partial truth here or half lies here. There's no middle ground of gray area. It's either true or false. And there's none of the above business either. That's not one of the options. None of the above. It's not an option. The attitude of worship is very important because that's the spirit. The spirit is our attitude. Matthew 15 verse 8 tells us, this people draweth nigh unto me with their mouth and honoreth me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. This is a quote from the book of Isaiah that God was speaking to his people. And he was saying that they've got a routine down pat. They do know all the rites and the acts and the ceremony of worship. They even know how to bow down before me and say they reverence me. But all that's coming from their mouth. Oh, they're speaking words that sound right in the hearing of men, but it's coming from their lips. But where it matters the most in their heart, in their spirit, they are far from me. Can these words apply to us today? Can they? Should they apply to us today? In the light of what we know now, should these words apply to us today? Worship defined in Scripture is as 1 Corinthians 10:31, whether therefore ye eat or drink, which are the two necessary things for life. You got to eat and you got to drink. Not talking about alcohol or liquor. It's talking about water or juices, but you got to drink. You got to eat. You don't do those, you don't live. So whether therefore ye eat or drink or whatsoever ye do, everything else, that includes how you go to work. If you go into work with a spirit of regret, oh, I don't want to be here. Oh, I don't want to go. But just for the money's sake, I'm going. I need the money, so I'm going to go. And you show up and you don't care if you're late. You don't care that you're walking in there and it's 30 seconds past the time you should have been at your desk. You don't care. Hey, at least I'm here. They better be glad I'm here. I could have not shown up today. I could have called out sick. Okay. I'm just going to do what I got to do, and they better not say nothing to me in here today or else. So you do just enough to justify the paycheck. Just enough. You're quick to take your breaks, you're slow to come back from it. Every chance you get to sit down and do nothing or whatever, loaf, you take it. And at the end of the time when you should get paid, you're watching that check real tight, real close, and you're calculating and making sure you didn't get shorted. Because if they short you by a penny, oh, you'll be in there hollering about it. I ain't gonna let you get away with taking advantage of me. I work my 40, you better pay me for what I work. Oh, you trying to take this from me? It's a penny, but a penny's a penny. The attitude you display at work is important too. Because you see, if that's the attitude you have for 5 days of the week, and whenever you get overtime, come to one day of the week that you say you set aside for God, and you really don't give him the day, you only give him a couple of hours or so. For that one time that you set aside for God, you bring the same attitude. You don't you don't go from being a horrible attitude employee to becoming a great attitude worshiper of God. It don't happen. Don't happen, I'm sorry. The book of James tells us that no fountain can give you sweet water and bitter water at the same time. It's either going to give you one or the other. So you can't be lousy on your job and then show up in church and be the greatest worshiper. If you do, you're putting on a front. If you're putting on a front, you're being false. If you're being false, you're lying. And God has nothing to do with liars. Who liars with? They're with the devil, because he's the father of lies. Attitude, spirit, whatsoever you do, cut people off on the road and you be mean and carry on and show up to church and shout and holler. Whatsoever you do, which is all encompassed in the realm of living, do to the glory of God. Glorifying God is worship. Worship is obedience to God. Verse 9 of Matthew 15 says, "But in vain they do worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men." So all they're doing is it's not worth it. It's a waste of time, but you can't tell folk that. How would you feel at the end of this, that you've been in church for all these years, faithfully attending, and on the day that Jesus returns to take his people out of the earth, you get left? How would you feel? And you say, but I went to church all that time and I did all these things, and why? Why? You ain't right, God. You ain't fair. What if when we die, in the moment of death, we know instantly where we're going to be? How would you feel? Well, you can't tell me. But it's one of them questions that ask that kind of gets you to thinking. Well, how would you feel? How would you? We say that there are some folk that when we've been privileged to be in their presence when they die, we see a look of joy on their face before that last breath leaves the body. Maybe in the moment of its leaving, we see their eyes light up and a big smile as if they're seeing the best thing they're ever going to see. And we say, oh, they went on to glory. And then there were some that you were in their presence when they passed, and the look on their face was one of such horror and anguish, and as if they were angry about stuff. And you say, oh, no, they ain't going up there, they gone the other direction. If we can say that then, in those instances, what about us? Are we going to have that smile of joy or the look of despair? And I'm not talking about now just anybody. I'm talking about folk that say they are Christians that go into church faithfully. If we don't worship God in spirit and in truth, going to get shocked. We will be shocked. And I don't mean pleasantly. We will get surprised. Don't let our worship be in vain. Psalm 145 verse 18 said, the Lord is nigh unto all them that call upon him, to all that call upon him in truth. So this is the contrast of two attitudes. You have an attitude in which the heart isn't right before God, or the spirit's not right, but all the acts and all the routines are being followed, all the ceremonies are being followed. But then you have an attitude that is right before God, which is true. In other words, let's read on a little bit more and find out what this truth that's talking about. You might want to look at verses 17 through 21 of Psalm 145. You might want to note that down and read those. But consider also Deuteronomy 4 verse 7, that this question is asked. It says, for what nation is there so great, who hath God so nigh unto them, as the Lord our God is as the Lord our God is in all things that we call upon him for? Is there any nation so great that God is so near to them? That all things you call upon him for, he's in it? That's the people who worship him in spirit and in truth. That's the nation that is great. This nation in which we live today is not in that state. It's not. I'm not even sure that our country merits the title of the greatest nation in the world anymore. If we go by an economic standard, we're not. We used to have a AAA rating. I hear now we've been downgraded to AA. We down there with all the other ones we used to look down on. Now we're right back there amongst them, looking at them, and they're going, oh, fancy seeing you down here, you slumming. And we're trying to act like the, the noble that back down and, I'm heading back up to the good things again. Will we? A nation that has turned its back on God will not prosper. But what about us, the people of God? If we turn our backs on God, in that we become permissive and tolerant of things that are not righteousness before God. Folk don't correct folk anymore in the house of God. You know that, right? It's why messages that seem to be corrective in their nature, are not well loved. Well, who are you to be preaching at us and telling us we're doing wrong? Are you not a person just like us and subject to sinning? How dare you? Folk will know people sitting near them or in the pews are doing wrong things and will not correct them because, after all, he who is without sin, let him cast the first stone. So I'm not going to throw none. But I thought you were washed in the blood of the Lamb. I thought you were living right. Folk don't even want to go to one another and make things right because they don't want to offend anymore. But isn't there an offense that already caused a strained relationship?